I don't want this to be a fool's errand. What I don't want to do is I don't want to take people's time, effort, and commitment without there being a clear shot that I could be the nominee.
Good morning. Welcome back. All right, we're going to talk a little bit of 2020 now. Let me just bring in our host, bring in our guest, Fernand Amandi, Tiffany Cross, Jason Johnson. Guys, the prompter was a little bit behind me, so I'm just going to introduce you and make you guys just jump right in. Let's talk about the Des Moines Register poll. It found that Joe Biden was on top of the field. There he is at 27%. Not much movement from where he has been. Bernie Sanders was second at 25%. Elizabeth Warren at 9%, and Kamala Harris at 7%. Beto O'Rourke, who is not running yet, is at 5%. Cory Booker, who is at 3%, and Amy Klobuchar, who is at 3%. I'm going to my pollster, Fernand Amandi. What do these polls tell us anything meaningful at this point?
You know, Joy, I think it's always interesting to look into what the results suggest now, but let's be honest. I mean, we are so far out, more than a year at this point, or a little less than a year, I should say, from the Iowa caucuses. What I think it does do is it does reaffirm that Joe Biden right now is a real candidate, and to the extent that there's a front runner in this race, I think you could look at the vice president now, because you don't just see it in Iowa. You see it in other states, key states across the country. Joe Biden seems to have an advantage. Now, is that the same as another Joe? Joe Lieberman in the 2004 election. I remember very vividly him being ahead by double digits in a lot of the polls. They used to call that Joe-mentum. That faded over time. But I think what we do see right now is that Joe Biden is in a position, if he can jump in and consolidate some big support behind him, perhaps stake out a front-runner position and put him in a position to maybe win this nomination early, which for the Democrats I think might be a good thing to get a nominee sooner rather than later.
Well, yeah, remember Joe-mentum? Remember that? Joe-mentum. I remember that. Wow, those were the days. Tiffany Cross, the Iowa, the poll. I mean, the polling can be weird, right? Because if you go back, you know, after Joe-mentum, 3 years after Joe-mentum, in the Iowa caucus polling in 2007, John Edwards was the leader of that poll. John Edwards was out front. You had Barack Obama there in second place, and then Hillary Clinton winding up in third. Barack Obama, of course, ends up winning the Iowa caucuses. So it's not this early on in the race. It's more name recognition than anything else. So what do you make of the people outside of those top two? Does anything about their position tell you where they might be able to move?
I have to tell you, Joy, I'm not putting that much credence in the Iowa poll. You know, we've talked about the past 20 years in politics, and the Democratic electorate has changed. And when you look at Iowa, it's 90% white. When you look at New Hampshire, it's 93% white. So the fact that these two Democratic primaries, you know, seem to, in the media circles, cast so much importance, I just have my doubts. I think when you get to Nevada and South Carolina, two states with a sizable share of voters who are people of color, that carries a lot more credence for me, given the change in demographics in the country. And also, just to remind people, in 2016, Bernie Sanders won New Hampshire, won New Hampshire, and we saw how that worked out. So I just feel like there are candidates who will ascend beyond these two states. I don't want to dismiss Joe Biden, though. I think he is a formidable candidate. I think he will eventually get in this race. I just think we have to redefine what electability means. I've said this on your show many times. I'll keep saying it. I'll keep beating that drum. That electability used to mean appealing to white swing voters. And now I don't know that there are white swing voters. If you're on the fence about Trump, you know, I have questions about you. So I think electability now means being able to turn out communities of color, being able to turn out young people who are willing to get out and organize on behalf of these candidates. So I think we're focusing a bit too much on the Iowa polls, to be honest with you. I'll be much more interested when Nevada and South Carolina votes and they're third and fourth in the primaries.
You know, and that's probably true, Jason Johnson. But I like polls. And I'm going to focus on it one more time. In clear defiance of Tiffany Cross's very coherent argument, which she is actually true. It's too early, and Iowa is so super white. It's very not representative of the whole party. Yet, I'm going to read another one. I'm sorry. I'm going to do just one more, Tiffany. But I'm going to Jason on this because you know what's a little incoherent about it? And actually, this kind of makes Tiffany's point a bit. There's an incoherence to the poll. The majority of people in this poll are saying they want Biden, which sounds to me like a safety voter. I just want safe. I want a safe white male candidate who can beat Trump. But then when you ask what people care about, they sound like Elizabeth Warren voters. They're for taxing the wealthy. They want the Green New Deal overwhelmingly. Medicare for all polls at a plurality just under 50%. Legalized recreational marijuana. Free college tuition at 36%. So that the identity and sort of the ideation of the voter is at divergence with the people that they're picking that they like.
Yes, Joy, look, as the political scientist here, like, I love polls too, I love math, I love numbers, and look, I've always had doubts about Joe Biden. I've always said there's a difference between being viable, which you can win your party's nomination, and being electable. I think he's very electable. If he ended up being the nominee, he would trash Trump. I don't think that's an issue. But I don't think he's viable. I don't think that Joe Biden can get through a Democratic primary in 2020. And part of this poll sort of says that to me. Okay, so he's leading Bernie Sanders by 2%. He hasn't even gotten into the race yet. But Iowa is about organizing. It's not a primary. It's organizing. Do you have enough people in the field to win those caucuses? I've been there. Joe Biden's going to have a team on the ground to actually pull this off, which is why the lower tier names are really interesting to me. Because when I look at Elizabeth Warren, I look at Cory Booker. I look at people who look like they could rise. I look at people who look like they might be able to jump 2 or 3% if they do well in one of the debates this fall. If I was Kamala Harris, I would say, okay, I appear to be doing well, but Elizabeth Warren seems to have moved ahead of her, so maybe she'll spend more time in Iowa. So, again, I don't think the poll doesn't mean anything, but the poll doesn't mean as much in Iowa as it does in a primary state.
Well, let's really quick. I want to stay on Biden for 1 minute, and then I want to talk about Elizabeth Warren, and I know we have another polling thing I want to talk about Florida. But let's do Biden, a couple of issues with Biden. I'm coming to you on this, Tiffany. The tough talk during the 1970s on busing has come back. Biden at the time said, I do not buy the concept popular in the 60s, which said we have suppressed the black man for 300 years and the white man is now far ahead in the race for everything in our society offers. In order to even the score, we now need to give the black man a head start or even hold the white man back to even the race. He told a Delaware newspaper, I don't buy that. And he also opposed the idea of busing, saying it was unfair to take parents who are not racist and bus their kids to inferior schools. That put a pin in that. Now here's Joe Biden talking about the crime bill, the thing that young black voters held the most against Hillary Clinton, who was just first lady at the time. She wasn't even elected anything. Biden helped write it. Here's Biden defending it.
Madam President, we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people.
Problem for Biden, Tiffany?
Absolutely. So that's another challenge with Biden. He has a very long legislative record that is going to come back and bite him. So you have to remember, as 2018 midterm showed, there was an overwhelming amount of young voters new to the process, engaged in the electoral process, who are going to make their voices heard this time around. Those folks who may have some element of Obama nostalgia, they're more woke than they are nostalgic, and they're going to look at some of the things that Biden said on the crime bill, on busing, and also we haven't even touched the Anita Hill issue yet. So I think these are going to be challenging things for Biden to overcome with that voting electorate, and they're going to make up a sizable share this round. I don't know that it's going to be enough to dwarf the enthusiasm around his campaign, but it'll certainly present challenges for him.
Yeah, and Fernand, let me come to you because there's one really interesting poll that was from you. It was from Bendixen Amandi polling, one of the finest polling firms in this country, and I don't say that because you're my friend. But it showed something that really did surprise me, because I think of Florida at this point as Trump country. But you're showing he's in some trouble. Please discuss.
Well, look, right now, I think the central question is not so much Trump favorabilities or even maybe the head-to-heads. It's if Trump were running for re-election, do you think he deserves another 4 years? And the voters of Florida spoke very clearly in the poll we just conducted. 53%, Joy, said no, Trump does not deserve another 4 years as president. Only 40% said yes. And I think coming off of the 2018 results in Florida, there's this misnomer that Florida is now Republican light. That is not the case. It continues to be a swing state, and there is an appetite for removing the president, at least according to Florida voters.
All right, Fernand Amandi making the case that Florida is still a swing state and that I am wrong that it is now a red state. We will continue to debate this over the course of this campaign. Fernand Amandi, thank you very much. Always great talking to you. Tiffany and Jason will be back in our next hour. And coming up in that next